research after his work as a psychology professor was almost shut down when he refused to be told to alter his use of personal pronouns at the behest of the people we must now call the gender fluid. Free speech. We're living in an era of free speech, are we not? Freedom. Well, any ideas that don't conform to the prevailing intellectual and moral orthodoxy are shut down on campus. Charles Murray, the sociologist, whose work on poverty and intelligence has caused great controversy over the years, was forced out when he tried to speak at Middlebury College, and he was further harassed at Harvard. Amy Wax, the Penn Law School professor, was banned from teaching a mandatory first-year law course after declaring that in her experience, and according to the research that she cited, the evidence of research, she declared that black students rarely graduated top of their class. Heather MacDonald, somebody who writes for City Journal and who is known for her sterling work based on scrupulous evidence about crime and about policing, and who defends the police as the protectors of black people amongst others. Heather MacDonald had to be hustled out of her lecture at Claremont McKenna College when protesters laid siege to the building. And of course, after every attack by Islamist extremists in Britain, in Europe, in America, or wherever, we are told instantly that any criticism of the Muslim world is Islamophobia and cannot be said. That is what we say is free speech. We are living in a kinder, gentler world. Well, really? Look at Black Lives Matter, committed to anti-racism, to getting rid of prejudice and discrimination, which we should all be in favour of getting rid of prejudice and discrimination. But look at the thuggery with which they conduct their affairs, and look at the racism with which they talk about white people. Sanctuary cities. I mean, I'm a Brit. Sanctuary to me means that you are given refuge from some kind of oppression. I was astounded to find myself in California, which is a sanctuary city, or within which were sanctuary cities. And I asked, what are people fleeing from that they need sanctuary? And the answer was, well, of course they're fleeing from the law. In the United Kingdom, there is a secular tyranny against religious beliefs, what are considered to be extreme religious beliefs, extreme Christian religious beliefs. For example, the belief that men and women alone can constitute the institution of marriage. For that, you find in Britain people who are believing Christians who can no longer operate as officials officiating on marriages because they cannot bring themselves to believe that this, or to stand as a kind of official over a ceremony which goes against their own religious beliefs. And on campus in Britain, as you have here, you have thugs disrupting and censoring any speakers who are pro the state of Israel. Campuses have now become unsafe for Jewish students. Where we have in Britain, and I think here as well, we have what is absolutely a whole variety of examples of gross intolerance. And what makes it so extraordinary is that this intolerance is being conducted in the name of tolerance. For example, in Britain, there is now an attempt being made to force religious schools, Jewish schools, Christian schools, to conform to the secular dictates, which say, among other things, that children should be taught that there is gay marriage, they should be taught sexuality, they should be taught freedom in sexual behavior. And Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox religious Jewish schools and some Christian schools don't want to do this. And they are being threatened with being shut down by the education inspectors in Britain on the grounds that it is essential for children to be taught that there are different kinds of sexuality. Otherwise, they will be intolerant. They will grow up to be intolerant. And when you say to the inspectors, but isn't it intolerant to shut down schools on the basis of their religious beliefs? The answer, which is quite Orwellian, is no, because it's only by teaching them about other forms of sexuality that they can become tolerant. So you have this extraordinary phenomenon where you have the secular world exhibiting gross intolerance of the people who they think are intolerant in the name of tolerance. This is completely crazy. So why is everything so upside down? Well, I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that far from being in the West in a culture which is the acme of reason, we are in fact living through a wholesale denial of reason, a denial of the very thing that the West prides itself on more than anything else. A denial of reason, a denial of rationality, a denial of evidence, and a denial of facts. There are a whole variety of issues where people are believing ideologies which run against the evidence. For example, we are told, just to take a fairly banal example, we are told the whole time in Britain that there is gross inequality in the pay that women have in relation to the pay that men have. Now, clearly there are some cases where discrimination does take place. Women are paid less because they are regarded as inferior. But I would suggest that's actually not very common. What is much more common is that women choose a way of life which they prioritize family, in which they are not so obsessed with getting to the top of the tree, they're not so obsessed with power, they don't put in the hours that their male colleagues do, even if they're working full-time. This is well attested through countless pieces of actual evidence. In other words, the disparity in pay is to a large extent caused by women's free choices. And yet we are told this is absolutely not the case. The very fact there is a disparity means that women are being discriminated against. On man-made global warming, and I'm aware that I may be treading on a few toes here, in which case I'm very sorry if I'm treading on toes, but here I go, I'm going to stamp on them really hard. On man-made global warming, the evidence that the world was actually hotter in the past and that a hotter atmosphere historically preceded carbon dioxide emission rather than the other way around, that's ignored or denied, and indeed you lose your job at a university if you say that. On the state of Israel, the fact that a state of Palestine has been repeatedly offered but rejected ever since the late 1930s, that fact has been ignored. The fact that the state of Palestine has been offered but rejected in favor of war and terror, that fact is ignored and denied. And the fact that the Jews are in fact the only people for whom the land of Israel was ever their national kingdom is ignored or denied, and people are murdered on the basis that it is being ignored or denied. We are no more rational when it comes to defending the West itself. From Iran to North Korea to the Palestinians until very recently, the West has told itself that all these people can be appeased through concessions and compromises. The fact that such people are in a state of self-declared war against the free world is denied. And when it comes to the attempt to Islamize the West, this is not only denied, but those who try to sound the alarm are vilified as Islamophobes. We're living in a world, I would suggest, where truth and lies have been turned inside out. Victim and victimizer have been reversed. We're living in a world where language has been hijacked, so that words like justice, compassion, in practice have come to mean the opposite. It's a mad Alice in Wonderland situation. It's redolent, of course, of the Soviet Union. Well, that's no accident, because there is a connection between the rejection of the constraints of religion and the denial of reason and freedom, so that contrary to what is popularly believed, conscience, justice, and real human rights have not been ushered in by the great age of secularism. They have been destroyed, or are being destroyed, by the great age of secularism. because what